Hey guys, so Arciela will be coming tomorrow in DFFOO, and let's talk about her. So first of all, her BT. Do you want her BT? Well, if you want to run Arciela, yes, you will want her BT. Apart from the usual 30% HP damage limit up, Arciela now have a new utility to prevent enemy from granting buff. So this is actually a very good utility, and it can cheese some of the fight, especially some fight where if the enemy grants certain buff on themselves, then they gain some form of immunity or something. So Arciela just stops that. So she does have Dispel in her kit, so it does feel like it is redundant, like if enemy just buff themselves then we just dispel it. But sometimes, we got to like wait, it is not Arciela's turn yet, and it is very crucial for us to dispel that buff, else we'll be wasting 2 or 3 turns in FR phase before we can get Arciela back and to use that specific dispel attack. So this is kind of like an upgrade, right? So it's you prevent the enemy from buffing themselves, and that's it. And it is actually important for a kid, especially if you want to use if you want to use Arciela, because apart from that, she provides additional damage, that skill with HP damage bonus up to 16%. So it's 2% per debuff on the enemy. So if you like have some generic debuff and the enemy is gonna buff themselves and replace the generic debuff, then this percent will drop. So if like there are 7 debuff and 1 enemy's buff, then you will just be dealing 14% additional damage. So the more buff the enemy has, then the lower that number is. So if you want to maximize Arciela's additional damage, then you will need to ensure that all the enemy have full debuff, right? So if you prevent the enemy from buffing themselves, so you can ensure that 16% is guaranteed. So how does that equate? So if you are dealing like 1 million damage per HP dump, so every HP dump you are dealing extra 160,000 damage. And again, please make sure the enemy is fully debuffed. Arciela only provide 3 frame debuff, so you kind of like need 5 more. Obviously, you can use call to inflict more debuff on the enemy. As for her kit now, she has always been an aura bot, a healer, a battery, disabler from HP silence, and preventing enemy from brave gain. If they can't brave gain, it's not brave steal. They can still steal brave when they attack you, but they can't battery themselves. So some enemy, they battery themselves and then they just outright kill you. So if you have that, then the enemy will not be able to do any damage. So it is a kind of disabling utility. And apart from that, she has Dispel, and she now prevent enemy from granting themselves buff. I forgot to add one more here, is that now she is kind of like a follow-up attacker in the form of additional damage, right? So like you have Cisne, every time you do an attack, Cisne will follow up with her attacks, but Arciela just imbues the additional damage into the attack of your main attacker so that they deal more damage. And if anything is launched during then, it's also amplified by wall damage. So for Arciela's kit, how to use her, first let's talk about her FR. It is generic 80% as Lost Boss does not have a buff, and her BT ensures that. And the boss is debuff. So if you fulfill that 2 condition, 80%. So this condition is superchargeable. So if you use a non-attacking ability like Yuna's Cheer or Aerith Healing Wind, then you get additional 50%, so you can increase the HP damage bonus by 130% per turn. So, and since her FR is also a unique FR, as we do not have a lot of characters that have FR that is a non-attacking FR. We have Aerith, we have Minwoo, but he doesn't have his Echo yet, coming soon, and Later down, if you have been following JP, we have Aiko, but Arciela is one of them. So one of the advantage of having this non-attacking FR is that it naturally grants 80%. So regardless of any condition, you get 80% every time they use the echoes. So if you have additional conditions, then you stack it up. So if Arciela activates her own FR and uses her echo, you get 160%. Okay, and her FR is instant turn. So in terms of setup, there is some advantage to that. So if you do want it, then it's good just to get her FR. Even though you don't have her BT, you still can use her FR to have a certain form of setup. For me personally, I like to use her FR more as an echo rather than the main FR, as she also doesn't have the 50% HP damage limit up, and that kind of is quite alright. It is not really like quite important. You can still win fights even though you don't have that additional 50% HP damage limit up. So yeah, so if you want to use her FR as main, go ahead. Talking about her utility, she have a lot. On the support side, she have a few, but to me now it is not that relevant anymore. So just as long you battery your party, you have enough brave, you deal damage, you deal cap damage, right? So I won't be talking too much about her supportive utility, but her disabling utility like HP silence. One thing to note is that it is good to disable boss, obviously, but sometimes there's some threshold attack that just bypass that. Alright, so do be careful. There is no specific logic in terms of when will boss bypass that or when they will not. So you just kind of have to, try and error. And one thing I have been seeing people talking about is that her debuff doesn't decrease when her BT is activated. So her HP silence is kind of like perpetual, like it's like forever, unless her BT effect drops. So to me, yes, it is good in a way if you have enemy that likes to warp a lot. But if you have enemy that likes to warp a lot, usually we bring an off-turn team that do a lot of counter attacks and things like that. So if we are strictly talking about a good setup, like what you're actually doing with the fight, and you set up for the perfect, okay, not technically perfect, but a good FR phase where you just use all the echoes, then you enter a BT phase, then you defeat the enemy. So usually in those kind of run, how many turns does the enemy even take? So if you just inflict the enemy with S2 and there's 2 turn HP silence, and if the enemy is just going to take 1 turn during your FR setup, then that is enough. So most of the time, like I say, the BT is there to facilitate, or basically to ensure that you deal 16% additional damage by having all her debuff there, and also to meet her FR condition. But in terms of the utility to disable, to me, it is not really the main point here. So it is good, but yeah, I wouldn't say that I purposely pull Arciela's BT just because I can have a debuff HP silence that is forever. Another thing is like the brave gain prevention as well. So same story, it is good, but if you use an LD, it's like 8 turns. Like 8 turns is not going to deplete like the BT, so it doesn't really matter. And her damage is not really good, so it is not like the other support unit like Deuce or Sarah or Lena. They get that follow-up attack that makes them like a DPS unit, or Ignis, right? Ignis is the best example. So Arciela did not get that, so her damage is really not really that good. But again, she covers that weakness with the additional attack damage, right? The 16%. So for your information, Wise is 10% and Arciela is 16%. But yet Arciela is not like the top unit or the third slot unit to provide more damage to the party. However, if your unit is doing a lot of HP dumps, as I calculated, if you're like doing 30 HP dumps a turn, then that additional damage does matter. So if you are really in that kind of for the future, which I also think future, like we have Zazat that can go up to 40% additional damage, so that kind of like you probably will not run Arciela that often anyway. So depends on how you want to play. She is still a good unit, that's why I give her an 8/10. She covers a lot of utility, although it's not like the best of the best, but it's not the worst as well. It's actually pretty good. So she covers a lot of ground, having supportive, having disabling, having damage, additional damage, not herself. And if you're a new player, that bunch of utility is really something that you should be getting. Alright, because it really does help you on all the previous all the previous Shinryu and stuff, and also the future ones. Else, for veteran player, it is not like something that we have never seen before. So yeah, personally, I kind of want to get a kit because I can do some form of showcase with that additional damage now. But knowing that Zazat is coming as well, so, and I have done, in JP, like having Zazat as well as Arciela having over 50% additional damage, it's fun, but it's not like really, really impressive. So I will not be specifically chasing her. I do really wish I get her BT for free, or when I'm pulling for her FR using tickets, because I will at least do that. So yeah, so I do hope so. I will definitely green her if I do get it. Alright, so for you guys who are cheating for her, good luck and have fun with Arciela. Thank you.